At the opening session on Tuesday evening, it was with proud admiration and great respect that we accepted Nick Gravagne into this elite group of people who have been recipients of the Golden Hammer Award, and at this time it is my pleasure to introduce to you this year's recipient of the Golden Hammer Award, Nick Gravagne, RPT.
Thank you. Thank you. This speech. For those of you that were at the opening ceremony, you should know that I saw my psychiatrist today and I'm all better now. Now about the speech, can you hear me okay, by the way? I've been teased and razzed this past week like never before in my life. That speech was really gonna be something, huh, Nick? I'd hear that over and over again. Hey, Nick, good to see you, congratulations. Hey, the speech, that's gonna be fantastic. So I'm coming down the the escalators today, and I meet a new guy, Eric Johnson. He's here someplace. We were on the escalator together. And he turns around, he says, you don't really know me, but I know a lot of the same people that you know. And nice to have actually met you. Oh, by the way, I hear you're a terrific orator. I don't know this guy. Anyway, that's how it's been all week, and I appreciate all the teasing and the rest of it. They said they saved the best for last. I don't know if that's true, but I've got something to say. Well, first of all, good evening, my friends, and welcome to this most excellent banquet. At the opening ceremony, Rick Balderson said that the Golden Hammer recipient was a musician, and then he said, well, a drummer. I knew instantly he was referring to me because he's been teasing me for years that anybody that plays in a band that doesn't know what key the song is in, you're not really a musician. Anyway, when I heard this, I knew it was me after a couple of sentences, and I turned to Kathy Smith, who was sitting next to me, an old friend, and I said, this can't be happening. I want to get out of here. And she said, no, you're not. You get your butt up there, buddy. I said, okay. You saw the rest of that, my mental breakdown. You know, you ever get asked a question that is very simple, or actually you ask it. You say, hey, Joe, what time is it? The answer is something like this, exactly. And it's supposed to rain tomorrow. What do those things have to do together? I'm actually setting something up here, believe it or not. So I thought I'd share with you a couple of the impressions that I had after the announcement was made. And as a side note, I'd like to mention that when actor, comedian George Burns, upon turning 90 years old, was asked, what do you think? He said, if I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. The reason I mention that is because some of my friends sent photos to my wife Peggy, who's not able to be here. A lot of you know her. She sends her loving kisses. So I called her on the phone. I said, did you get the photos? She said she got the photos. I asked her, so what do you think? And she said, is that what you're wearing? Would it kill you to dress up a little? Where's that tie you got for Christmas? Where's the tie? You look like you're going to work in the shop. Anyway. Then in the hallway reception, frantically looking for some ideas about what to say tonight, And I'm reminded from a famous scene in the movie The Graduate, starring Dustin Hoffman. At his college graduation ceremony, the young character of Ben Braddock, played by Dustin Hoffman, is taken aside by an older fella, and he says, "Ben, listen to me. I've got one word for you. Plastics." Right? Plastics. And the reason I bring this up is because I was in the foyer, and a little group had formed, including piano technician, comedian Alan Eder, he's someplace there, and mad scientist, the mad scientist of our organization. Who could that possibly be but Carl Lieberman? And Keith Bowman, this little group. So I'm asking for suggestions on what I might say tonight. Carl's face turned serious, and if you know Carl, you know what that looks like. And he says, "I've got it. I have got it. You need a hook, Nick. You need a hook." Now, here's the hook. Are you listening to me? Your entire speech, every bit of it, you sing to the tune of My Way. Now, I'm expecting the other people sitting there to laugh like you're laughing. Instead, what I get is, "Wow, that's an amazing idea." So these are my friends trying to help me out. So here I am. Well, obviously, the award is an emblem of achievement and a huge vote of confidence by my peers, and to say I'm grateful just falls really, really flat. It's an honor beyond anything I could have imagined for myself. Of course, it's beautiful. Nate's, Rayburn's artistry and skill always come together in these little gems. And they're personalized too. The one I got features what's called a geode. I don't know from geodes, but I found out a lot about it this time. It's a stone that's cut, I think most of you know, and it's really cool, like a cross-cut section. And the base now is made of Bolduc rib material, which I thought was really cool. Quarter-sawn Bolduc rib material. Something very familiar to me. Even the tuning pin that's in there has a 5-degree lean back, like it would be in a pin block. There's no torque, it would never hold a tuning, but it doesn't have to. Why would it be if it's only in spruce? But as I sit here tonight, as I stand here tonight, I remember the words of late great Dale Probst, a close friend in many ways. And the 2016 recipient of the Golden Hammer Award, he said, "I'm here tonight because," and then he mentioned of Leroy Edwards and many other names that followed. And of course, his loving wife, Elizabeth, for everything that paved the way forward for him to be successful in business as an instructor and as a leader on the national scene, and quite frankly, he said, as a human being, as a man. Well, I really do echo those sentiments tonight. For me, the list is a very long one, and I'm not going to mention it, but there's a small handful that I had to think about hard. Okay, where are these few names that have heavily influenced me in my piano work, my journal writing, and role as an instructor? On the top of the list is Wally Brooks for giving me a target. This is good work. This is what you need to do. Susan Graham for not only being a great piano technician, but she was an absolute gem to work for those years back as the journal editor when I was writing and Rick was writing at the same time. Two names together, Richard Davenport and Rick Balderson, who just in a matter of hours helped me understand what really good performance piano tone is supposed to be. Once you got that, everything else then becomes that's the benchmark. You know how to look at every other piano. And Lloyd Meyer of Renner USA for asking me on to the Academy, because he took me aside. I said, "Nick, you've done this, you've been there, you taught, you've done all this. Why don't you really do something creative for a change, you know?" Just kidding. So those are the names that I'm mentioning, but there are many, many more. Every person that I've contacted or been in touch with here, that's called me on the phone, that's spoken with me in the hallway, anything like that, every bit of it has worked for me. And we all know this, by the way. That's one of the great things we get from a convention like this is the feedback, the interaction, back and forth. It's wonderful stuff. A little background, I'm originally from New Jersey. Really? Cool. There's nothing spectacular about my career. I never went to Germany. I never went to Italy. I never had a mentor. On the other hand, I owe a big debt of gratitude to that New Jersey chapter of long ago. This chapter buzzed with excitement at every meeting. Charlie Huther, who later went on to national leadership, some of you may remember Charlie, was an active member and a big help to me. So in a way, that chapter was like a single person. You might say that chapter was my mentor. Now, accurate machine tuning was not on the scene at that time. But I had a Peterson strobe, an old Peterson strobe to help kind of kickstart, something, so I could at least get some feel for what's going on, but I failed my first tuning test. Given to me by a member called Roger Endress, who operated a Baldwin dealership. But he was gracious, pointed out the errors in my temperament octave. Finally, he said, you're never going to pass this test unless you can tune this piano by ear. It's not bad what you did, but it's not good enough to get in. We can help. Let me know how we can help. Well, I hit the books hard and the piano hard, especially William Braithwaite's legendary books and chapters, right, on tuning. Well, one night at a chapter meeting, I asked a question about partials. I wanted to know if, when playing a fifth, that the third harmonic of the lower note coincides with the second harmonic of the higher note of that interval. Should I actually be hearing that sound? Should I really be hearing what that frequency sounds like right there? That was important for me to know. After a short pause, a voice in the back of the room with a very thick German accent said, "Ja, at this frequency, you'll be hearing the beatniks." The beatniks is how it came in. Well, I heard the beatniks. And Braithwaite's book came to life for me in a big way. And I worked and I passed my next tuning exam. Now, our meetings were usually held in Clifton, New Jersey, not far from New York City, in a building that housed, at that time, the American Piano Supply Company. Remember them? One chapter program featured a new grand piano soundboard. This guy from New York City comes in with a soundboard under his arm, and I thought that was pretty cool. You figure that thing should have weighed a ton. If you don't know any better, you would think it must weigh a ton. So he said how he built the soundboard. He pointed out the grain pattern, how the rib crown was introduced, and I was hooked. Don't ask me why. I was a young man at the time. I knew I wanted to do that, and eventually I did, and so I made hundreds of soundboards at this time. Regarding the Golden Hammer Award, of course, I will value it forever. But the bigger truth is, what I value most is all of you. The interaction over the years, the fellowship with other instructors, the fellowships that are always being made new, and I have several new ones just from being here. That's huge to me, and I'm sure it is to many, if not most of you. The attendees, fantastic. You folks greased the wheels. You put your money up there, and you came. You paid your way, and that's fantastic. My fellow instructors, especially you tuning instructors, all right? Now, I understand if I'm tuning, say, a temperament octave, I'm making these little changes, okay, instinctively. Why is this third so slow or something? Well, because this fourth is too fast, and, you do this. But you tuning instructors, man, you just lay it out. You lay it out, and while you're talking. So I get that. So my fellow instructors, that's big. And all of those of you in leadership positions. Now, I've held a few of those kinds of positions, but nothing like some of you who've gone on, and you've been RPPs, and you've done so many things. You've been on the Institute. Aces, love it. I'm going to close with a short story, one that seems to have come full circle. You know, oftentimes in our lives, they're like fractals, right? There's like a little wheel within a bigger wheel, a smaller gear within a bigger gear. So this story goes all the way back to February of 1977, and it takes place right here in Tucson. I was living in Las Cruces, New Mexico at the time and working for a Kauai dealership. In those days, Arizona State held a 2 or 3 day event, either in Phoenix or Tucson. And in '77, it was here in Tucson. So I packed everything up in my Volkswagen bus and drove out. While there, I met up with another young whippersnapper, a fellow by the name of Steve Brady. I recognized in Steve that youthful, angular, hungry look. He wanted to learn something, and so did I. So he was excited to be there. So was I. I had a new friend. But even in those early years, Steve, ever the instructor, but not what you might think. We hung out, and we attended classes together. One class in particular featured George Diefenbaugh, remember George? And none other than Jim Coleman Sr., who at that time was younger than I am now. And the class was on the basics of, grand piano prep. Then came a segment when George was demonstrating traveling bass hammers. So he had a long screwdriver, and he was doing the usual thing, and we're watching the shanks come up and down. And he sees one, he says, look at this one, it's going off a little bit, so that needs traveling paper. Now, for some strange and very dark reason, I thought the class ambiance needed a little bit of levity, right? So I raised my hand and I asked, I said, Mr. Diefenbaugh, isn't it possible that the one you see is going wrong is the right one, and all the others are going wrong? Well, just like this, there was some giggling and chuckling in the room, but in a few minutes, a deadly, deadly silence overtook us. George was looking straight at me. He was focused on me. I was getting what they call in Italian il malocchio, the evil eye. What little grin I might have had on my face quickly fell apart. I managed a quick sideways look to Steve, who looked like a melting snowman at that point. All class attendees now were looking at the walls or at the floor. The thing is, I'll never forget Jim Coleman Sr., who was standing behind George, fighting off the biggest grin I could imagine. Now, not because he, approved of my impertinent remark, but because he knew George Diefenbaugh very, very well, and he knew what a gigantic trap I had just sprung on myself. So at break time, Steve Brady corners me in the hall somewhere. He's got waving a big finger in my face. He's laughing, but he's serious too. And he says, so you're the class clown, is that it? Don't you know who those guys in there are? Those are the Righteous Brothers, man. That's Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. You can't do that. You can't go in there and just grab up the whole scene, baby. So he said, listen, if we're going to hang out and we're going to be friends, you're going to have to put Bozo the Clown back in the closet. So I put Bozo the Clown back in the closet, and I was a good boy for the rest of the convention. Now, as to the wheels within wheels thing, it would be 13 years later. George Diefenbaugh introduced me into the national scene, teaching instruction. Kind of ironic there. So in a lighthearted but ill-conceived moment, I said to George, oh, by the way, George, do you remember way back, 1977, I caught myself? George says, what? What about 1977, Nick? I said, oh, nothing. Nothing. You sure? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Let me finish with this. I read or heard a statement, I don't know how long ago, and it goes like this. People may not remember what you did, and they may not remember what you said. They'll never forget how you made them feel. So I say, go out, do good, and be good. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.